we start this off by inviting Pastor Steele up to start us with a prayer, please.
May we pray. Father God, we need you now. We need you, O Lord, to cover our city. We need you, Lord, to cover our elected officials, cover our police department, and most of all, Lord, we need you to cover our community. We pray, Lord, that we are able to eradicate the violence, the senseless violence that are taking the lives of men, women, children, and adults. And Father God, we ask a special covering over the city of New Haven. We need you, Lord. We can't do this without you. We need your guidance, we need your hand, and most of all, we need your wisdom. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor, and thank you, everyone, for being here. Really appreciate on such short notice people gathering together to participate today. I also wanted to just make sure that I acknowledge President Walker Myers, Majority Leader Furlow, Alder Wingate, Alder Douglas, and any other alders here. Okay, got it. Alder Singh, thank you for being here. Today I stand with Chief Reyes and other members of the Police Department, Board of Alders, faith community, clergy, community members against the gun violence that is continuing to tear apart our community. Last night there was, as you know, multiple shootings and 2 homicides. It brings the number of homicides this year to 11. I'm heartbroken at the increase in violence in our cities in recent days and the loss of members of our community. And my heart goes out to the family members and loved ones of those that we have lost. Around the nation, we're seeing an increase in crime. The COVID crisis has caused severe economic hardship, contributed to the stress in our communities, and limited our typical direct engagement with our community. And with the courts closed, it slowed our ability to get the violence under control. This is coupled with a general nationwide stress on the relationship between the community and the police. Like many communities, New Haven has been hit quite hard. Gun violence has no place in New Haven. And we must do everything we can as a community to provide safe spaces for individuals who are at risk of harm to themselves and others to work out their issues. I want to make clear that Chief Reyes and the Police Department have my full support. There have been some statements made in recent days regarding the cuts that I've made to the Police Department. We have serious financial problems in our city. There's no doubt about that. The members of our police department have been, the numbers in our police department have been going down for several years now. And that has brought us to the point where we are today. While I need to make very difficult budget decisions that cut significantly almost every department in the city, this is in no way an indication that I do not value the work of our police department. In fact, it's just the opposite. And in particular, at times like these, we rely on our police officers and the relationship that they have developed with our community for many, many years to help us address these very difficult challenges. Officers have a very difficult job to do in the community, and it's vital that we support them. I want to implore the community to work with our police force to quell this violence. And I think that the number of calls and messages that I've received of people willing to step up, the number of people you see here today underscore that. The violence that happened last night and that's happened in recent days is completely unacceptable. And the behavior of the people that have been involved in that violence is something that we cannot, as a community, accept. And we stand here together alongside many community members and community leaders to say that we need to put politics aside and we need to work as a team to ensure that members in our community have the support and accountability they need to put the guns down. We cannot do this alone. Our police department is well equipped to respond, but we cannot do this alone. We need your partnership to share information and to support our community. I think it's important to underscore that ultimately we are not going to address the issues around gun violence without addressing the underlying economic inequality and systemic racism that has existed for many, many years in our community. However, we must immediately work together and do what we can to ensure that people put the guns down right away. We're holding an emergency meeting later this afternoon with community leaders in law enforcement and other stakeholders to discuss how to collaboratively and immediately address the violence. I'm going to ask the chief next to share some of an update and also some of the additional actions that we are taking. And I know many other members of our community are stepping up as well, and I deeply appreciate your solidarity in this moment and your support. So with that, I'll hand it over to Chief Reyes.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. I too appreciate the presence of all of our partners here today, and want to give you an update on the recent violence in the last 24 hours that has plagued our city. We've had 2 homicides that happened, one on Munson Street and one on Ferry Street, and I'll give you some details on that. At approximately 6:05 p.m. last night, we had a victim on 351 Munson Street that was sitting in a vehicle, and he was shot through the windshield of the car. What we know is that there were 2 additional occupants in that vehicle. One was his son, who's 15 years old, and one was his brother, who was 18 years old. They fortunately were not injured during the gunfire. The victim was rushed to the hospital where he later succumbed to his wound. He did have a gunshot wound to his chest. The victim's name is Howard Lewis, with a date of birth of 7/7/1980. He was a 40-year-old male and was a resident of Hamden, Connecticut. The next incident we had was at 632 Ferry Street, and that occurred shortly thereafter at 7:01 p.m. The victim here was seen driving moments before he was shot on a dirt bike up and down Ferry Street when an individual or individuals shot upon him. 8 cartridge casings were located at the scene. He sustained 2 gunshot wounds, and the bike he was operating was also struck. He is a known gang member. This is the 2nd time he's been shot in the past 2 years. We have done work with this individual to try to prevent both him doing retaliation or being shot upon. And you should know he is a 20-year-old male and he is a resident of New Haven. The next shooting we had occurred at the intersection of State Street and May Street, and that occurred at 8:20 p.m. The victim, we believe, was in a vehicle at the time when he was struck. Witnesses are stating that there was an exchange of gunfire between the vehicle where inside of which the victim was in and a second vehicle. Some witnesses are actually reporting that the second vehicle, someone came out of a sunroof and was shooting into the car. Ballistic evidence at the scene does suggest that there was an exchange of gunfire. We got over 16 rounds at that scene, substantiating that there in fact were multiple weapons used in that incident. The victim is an 18-year-old resident of Hamden, Connecticut, and again, his injuries were a gunshot wound to the neck. He actually was driven to the hospital in a vehicle, and fortunately, he did survive his injuries. The final incident last night occurred at Whaley and Hobart, and that occurred at just after 10 p.m., 11 hours, it came in to us. The victim of that incident, who would later die, his name is Sharif Ibrahim. With a date of birth of February 28, 1987, he was a 33-year-old male. This individual was recently released from prison back in March due to a shooting incident for which he was charged. Preliminarily, we believe that his shooting was a retaliation for that incident. And again, that is preliminary information. This incident appears to be an exchange of gunfire as well, in that exchange of gunfire occurred in the rear of 533 Whaley Avenue. We did recover a handgun near the victim, and that handgun was seized. Mr. Ibram is a known gang member as well to the city of New Haven. and to the New Haven Police Department. In terms of the nature of these incidents that we can share with you, obviously these investigations are in their infant stages, and so there's very little information we can give you. But we do know that 3 out of these 4 incidents, in 3 of the 4 incidents, the victims did have extensive criminal histories. And we do believe that some of these incidents are in fact connected to each other. And again, the extent of which we cannot share. We have been stepping up our patrol efforts. You should know that while we do not hit the panic button, we will be putting every resource possible to quell the violence in our city. Right now, we stand at 56 shootings and 11 homicides, well beyond the pace of last year. Last year, we ended the year with just over 50 shootings and 11 homicides. So, as you can see, we are already at the pace, at the numbers we ended with last year. That's very concerning for us as well. So what we will tell you is that we have been using our partners, our federal, state, and local partners. You will see our federal partners out on the road with us. That is common practice, and it will certainly be employed as a strategy in the next coming weeks. You're going to see all hands on deck from the police department. The message I want to send to our community is that we must come together during this time, but make no bones about it. Your department is working as hard as they can for you, and we will quell this violence. We are here, we are your department, and we are prepared to work with you to make sure that our city streets are safe again. We know how to keep our city safe. It's done through the partnerships that are in this room and those that we share outside of this room with our state and federal partners. We will be putting all hands on deck to make sure that we reduce the gun violence in the city.
There's a couple of other people that have been generous enough to share some words. I'd like to turn the microphone over to President Walker Myers.
Good afternoon. I stand here in solidarity saying enough is enough for our community, but I want to talk from a community perspective. Listen, in 2011, when we had a whole bunch of violence going on in the city, I was losing people that I care about left and right to the senseless violence in the community. And until we address the real cause of why this violence is happening, we'll end up being back here again. We want it to stop. So it's gonna call for some really bold measures. And when I decided to speak here today, I was a little reluctant because I'm tired of standing in front of the press saying we need to do certain things for our community. Now is the time to just do it. We need to be bold. We need to figure out how to really invest in the communities that have been left out for many, many years. We need to invest. We all know that if people have a good job to take care of their families, then some of this violence will stop. And we have to do that. This does not happen by chance. We have the roadmap. We have tons of maps in this city that point to where violence will happen, where unemployment will be high, where food insecurity will happen. We have the map. We just have to do what it takes, and it's going to take all of us, including me, because when I say all, I mean all of us. We're gonna have to get outside of these walls in City Hall, outside of our police cars in these communities, because that's the only thing that's really gonna change the things that's happening here. People are hopeless. They wanna feel like everyone have their best interest in mind, and we love working with our police department. We just want the police to police these neighborhoods with respect, and that's it. That's all we want. So I think if all of us come together, the community included, this is your community. You live here, you're raising your children here, and you work here. If you want to have a community that is vibrant, you need to step up. We all have to step up. And we have to stop saying that the things that happen, that's a longer term plan. Well, we've been waiting long enough. It's time that we actually put the plan in action, and that's going to take all of us. It's going to take hard decisions. And guess what? We are in some tough financial times in this city, but listen, all my life I've been in tough financial times, and I make it happen every single day. So we have to figure it out, and we're all committed to doing that. And the last thing I want to say is it's going to take churches to come outside of your churches. The pastors, you have to come out into the communities. Community, you have to come out of your house and get involved in some of these things that's happening in the city. We have to clean up these neighborhoods. We have to really invest in these neighborhoods the way we invest in downtown. And that's just the bottom line for me, because absent that, will continue to be here year after year. Yes, we're in a different place than we was last year, but one murder is too many. Thank you.
Thank you, President Walker-Myers. Pastor Steele.
Thank you, Mayor and Chief Reyes. What I want to do here is kind of reframe the narrative by asking a question: is there such thing as black-on-black crime? Because crime has no color. Crime is crime. And I pray that we will remove that terminology and that language from our minds. I wish that we lived in a world that was absent of crime, but that's not our reality. Black kill black, Italians kill Italians, Polish kill Polish, Irish kill Irish, Latinos kill Latinos, and etc. Crime has no color, but it does have a cause. Money, gang activity, jealousy, crime, extortion, and many other worthless and foolish reasons. People kill each other, period. It's been the case for thousands and thousands of years. Murder is nothing new to our community. Gun violence isn't anything new to our community. And I'm outraged to see so many murders, shootings, and the loss of life in New Haven like everybody else. But unfortunately, we're still seeing the remnants of the 80s crack epidemic. 3 generations removed, loss of factory jobs, and activities that kept our young people busy. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to blame each other? Are we going to make this political? Are we going to make this a Harper administration versus Elliker administration comparison? Are we going to throw shade on the Black Lives Matters movement? If that's your intention, you don't have the best interests of the community in mind. I'm going to pray as your pastor, but as your community leader, I'm going to continue to advocate for more funding for programming for our communities, putting pressure on large employers like Yale and others to really share some of the burdens. It is proven that the cause of crime are complex: poverty, parental neglect, low self-esteem, alcohol, and drug abuse can be connected to why people break the law. We need community support and government funding to put programs in place to address these needs. You want to reduce shooting in New Haven? Fund our schools and libraries and the arts. Support unions. Build affordable homes. Encourage black home ownership in the suburbs. Let me give you some words for today: poverty, institutional racism, structural racism, economic inequalities, social justice, redlining, white supremacy. How do we stand in solidarity with each other? How do we eradicate violence? We must put our money where our mouths are, and we must take preventive measures and train up our children while they're young by giving them programming, such as the Q House that's getting ready to be built. Other programming that churches need to step up, step out of the 4 walls, and become a beacon of light for their community. Tutoring programs, after-school programs, mentoring programs. We need all of this in place in order to bring about a safe community and a safe New Haven. Thank you.
And Pastor Hernandez, thank you. Thank you, Pastor Steele.
Good afternoon, all. It is sad that we have to find ourselves here, this place once again. Much has been said. I will be brief, but I do recognize that the city of New Haven has come way too far for us to turn back the clock to about a decade ago, and when I visited different cities in the state, they would somewhat mock and say, "What's happening in New Haven? I'm not going to New Haven." So we have an opportunity to stop this right where it's at. As the chief stated, we've reached the numbers that we had already back in 2019. We cannot afford by any means to have our kids, now that summer has begun, to be in the crossfires of any gang or any rivalry, whatever it may be, in our communities. I echo the words of our president of the board. It's time for the church to step out of the four walls and do our part. Live out Matthew 25 and be our brother's keeper and care for our kids and make sure that New Haven is safe. So we do call on other clergy to step up, to work with the mayor's office, to work with Chief Reyes and our NHPD to make sure that New Haven does not go back to what it was a decade ago. It is for that reason that we come today in solidarity. We cannot allow crime to riddle the streets once again in New Haven. I think that as long as we, the faith-based community, are here, we need to take a stand and say that not under our watch will this happen in New Haven once again. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Pastor Hernandez. And there's one more speaker before we open up to questions. Mr. Chaskar.
The systematic racism, the poverty in our communities, the redlining of our communities, these are some of the major issues that has gotten us to this point. I'm just calling out to anyone in the community who are picking up these guns and making decisions to pull these triggers. I'm asking you and I'm pleading with you to stop. I seen the most disheartening, saddest thing yesterday, where one of our brothers that passed, his children, all his children were alive on the video. And all you could do is, as you look at them babies and see the effect that is now coming over these children that no longer has their father or their uncle. That is the worst. That is the worst. To have to look at the babies and now they don't know. They're not going to get to walk to prom with their dad. Some of them played in my basketball league. Dad was there all the time watching the games. They're not going to be able to do that anymore. And I think that was the most disheartening thing that is going on right now, is that as we take lives of people in our community, how much are we affecting the children? And then we accidentally shoot a 19-year-old sleeping. I was saying this for months, because when COVID came, I knew summer started way too early. Summer started way too early. Everybody was out of school. Youth programs were stopping. People had nothing to do. But regardless, at the end of the day, we have to take accountability. The people who are picking up the guns, you gotta take accountability. You gotta put the guns down. You gotta think about those babies. That video is all over Facebook right now. Just look at those babies sitting there. So I'm pleading to just, it gotta stop, y'all. We gotta stop.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Are there any questions?
Chief, can I ask you a question about response last night with all of the incidents? Can you just explain to viewers that are watching how it ties up maybe resources that you want to do community work, or does it tie up, or can you explain what that's like for you to get all those calls in one evening?
Well, it does put a strain on our resources, especially when incidents happen back to back that way. We have crime scenes that we have to cover. Our detective bureau becomes a strain on the detective bureau. No doubt about it. It's definitely when concentrated amount of crime happens in such a short period of time, it does have a tremendous impact on our resources. But listen, we managed. We were able to handle that. I want to commend the men and women of the department, because people worked almost triple shifts yesterday. They're back at it today, working around the clock. Whether it's our homicide unit, our general investigations, investigating these shootings, everybody is working. Our criminal intelligence unit, the work that's happening behind the scenes is the work people don't know. We've done a tremendous amount of work in the past few weeks to rid the streets of handguns related to the previous violence that we've been dealing with. So the work is being done, but just to answer your question, it does put a tremendous strain on our resources.
I know that pull for you? I mean, is that a huge issue for you guys, or are you managing going forward?
Well, it's definitely a factor, but I think what's important to remember here is that that's why we have partnerships. I want to say thank you to our federal, state, and local partners, particularly the FBI and the ATF, who have been writing with us, who have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to help us both identify the drivers of this violence and help us mitigate future violence. And I also want to thank the state police, Commissioner Ravella, who's availing resources. There are things that are happening, again, behind the scenes that are really critical to the success that we will have moving forward in terms of quelling this violence. One of the things, for example, is right now we've been given full priority up at the state lab, and they're turning cases, results on NIBIN, results on DNA as fast as possible, sometimes within 24 hours. That's critical for us because it helps us connect these crimes definitively, and it also helps us potentially solve some of these crimes so we can make arrests in these cases.
Chief, why specifically do you think any of last night's shootings took place? Do you have any reasons, motivations, suspects that you're probing? And why do you think some of these may be related?
Well, the why exactly they took place, I mean, that's a tough one. What I can tell you is that we do feel they're connected. We do feel that they're, in at least 3 of the cases, they are retaliation for previous beefs. Without getting too much into that and without sort of pigeonhole, creating a sense that that's the narrative. That's preliminary information that's based on our intelligence. A thorough investigation is being done. We're going to be able to put out more definitive information. But suffice it to say is that we have a sense of what's going on, and our actions right now are being dictated by the information that we have and the knowledge that we have.
Chief, I have a
Sir.
question. My name, as you know, is Dennis Herfleby.
Yes, sir.
I'm a resident of New Haven, called it home for 55 years. I sit in on the budget meetings. I sit in on your weekly, now bi-weekly, ComStat meetings. I support the New Haven Police Department. I think you guys are great. I'm happy to go on record as saying I love the New Haven Police Department. You're not perfect, but you are great. I support the mayor as well. I think you're doing the best. But a couple of questions. You're asking for the community to get more involved. There's a meeting later today. I think it would help if we publicize that. But in terms of manpower, it seems to me as though you don't have the resources. When I sat in on a budget meeting, you made that plea and made that statement. You were very clear, you didn't mince your words during the budget hearings, that you didn't have enough. The budget that was being assigned to board holders wasn't enough. And now we sit here, only $60,000 was dedicated towards doing this study in terms of what the proper staffing is required, but it really needs something like $250,000 to do an adequate study. It would seem to me that would be a first start. Then the overtime budget is $7 million, which means your men and women are going to be running, crazy shifts. You mentioned people running 3 shifts. That's got to be dangerous at some point. So it seems, and then I'm hearing that between 20 and 25 officers, the more seasoned ones with 20 to 25 years of experience are retiring. That is only going to add to the manpower shortage, especially considering that the new class of 18 to 20 isn't going to hit the streets to April. I mean, what can you do? It seems like with that as a backdrop, you're limited. Why not call in help at the state or federal level? Have you thought about a buyback program? Have you thought about issuing rewards for some of these crimes? I know recently, in Waterbury, they put up a $5,000 reward for somebody who decapitated the statue of Christopher Columbus. Last year, West Haven raised $14,000 in reward money for a dog that was tortured. Here in New Haven, on Valley Street, we've got a 19-year-old beautiful young woman who was killed in her sleep and no reward money. I know I've asked a lot of questions and thrown a lot at you, but maybe you can address some of that, or maybe the members of the board can speak to.
There is reward money for the Valley Street, so.
Hold on. So,
Let's let the chief
that's
respond,
what
and
I'm
I'd like to respond.
maybe you can address some of those things.
I'll try to encapsulate what you said there and try to give you a coherent answer. I think in terms of resources, listen, this is the state of the city at this current time, and it's our job to do the very best we can with what we have, and we get that. And in terms of resources, in terms of tapping into our federal state partners, I just said that's exactly what we're doing. We are working with our federal, state, and local partners. That is the blueprint of our success. It has been. That's what led us out of being the 4th most violent city in the country back in 2011. That was the recipe. So we haven't abandoned that recipe whatsoever. We're actually doubling down on that, and that is happening currently. It's been happening for the past few months, certainly. And so my message to the community is, yes, we are not able to do the type of things we'd like to do. For example, walking beats, right? I said, it's not that we're abandoning community policing. We are a community policing organization. But some of the tools that we are able to use, some of the strategies, such as walking beats and things of that nature, that has been limited due to the reduction in our numbers. And it's important for us to communicate that to the community because they have a responsibility to know that. They have a responsibility to know what the expectations should be of their department and of their city. More importantly, it's also an appeal so that we can think outside the box and figure out ways that we can force multiply our partnership and utilize our partnerships to achieve the same goal. We've done that as well. The reason we got out of 2011 wasn't just law enforcement. It was because of the relationships we've built. And so right now our focus is to strengthen those relationships now more than ever, not to allow the recent events to derail us from what we know works here in New Haven, which is the relationships and the partnerships, and for us to double down now. We need to come together. I think that's what this is about. This is us standing here saying to our community, we're not divided. We're standing together, police department, clergy, residents, civic leaders. At the end of the day, that's what we need to focus on. How can we get this community back on track? And we're going to do that. We're going to do that together. But as I think the Reverend said, it's not just police, right? But we are a critical piece of that, and we're doing everything we can, and we'll continue to do that to make sure we bring the violence on. Mayor, I think you want to say something. Yeah.
I just want to clarify some questions that have come up that I think indicate that some people don't fully understand the dynamics of the cuts that have been going on and the budget challenges. So the reason that we currently have a low number of officers in the police force has been in the making for quite a long time. 2 years ago, we lost about 50 officers to other towns. Last year, we lost many as well. We still, even though my administration cut 48 officer vacant positions from the police force, we still have room to grow this force. We just took on a new class that started about 2 weeks ago. There's room for an additional class. I'm not going to say that the budget cuts aren't going to have an impact, but I think we have to be clear that the number of officers that we had 5 months ago is about the same number of officers that we currently have right now because the elimination was vacancies. And this problem has been in the making for a long time. Also, crime doesn't directly correlate with the number of officers we have. In 2011, we had around 430 officers in our force, and now we have many fewer than that. There's a lot of reasons that this situation is happening right now, some that are very focused on New Haven, but some that are indicative of a much larger problem. I think the important thing for people to understand is that even though we have low officers right now that were pointed out because of a lot of retirements and people moving from other departments, there are additional positions, and the chief and the city is working to fill those positions. Other questions?
You talked about a lot of things that are still not taken care of, endemic poverty in the city. What would you do? I mean, you made this appeal, but what exactly would you do now?
So I don't have the exact, oh, sure, that's perfect. I like to be on the larger stage. So I don't have the exact answer, but what I do know is investment is important. If you look at downtown, they have an economic plan for downtown. We need to do that in the neighborhoods. When you come into these neighborhoods that's already redlined, anybody can get the map. You can use the red line map, you can use the COVID map, you can use the unemployment map, you can use the tons of maps in the city. You will be able to see where the violence is going to happen because of a number of different factors. Unstable housing, economic instability. That is why we're here. This violence didn't just happen this year and it laid low since 2011. This is a product of years and years and years of things that needed to change that didn't happen. And once actually people come to terms with they need to change a lot of things around economics and a lot of things around race, then we're going to be back at this kind of conversation. It's a number of things we could do. We can invest. We can invest in these communities. We can invest in the people that live in these communities. Everyone always talk about programming. Well, let's really talk about programming. We need to talk about programming that's going to actually have people have a real career and sustain their families, because that's what it's about. I'm a mother. I'm a mother of two, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to take care of my kids. So if I have opportunity like many other people, then I will be able to take care of my kids, and I won't have to be forced with certain situations and challenges that some of these people in these neighborhoods are forced with. So those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. And actually, while I was sitting here listening to all the different speakers and listening to a lot of different things, and questions that was asked, now what I'm gonna do is actually call on the city to actually put before the Board of Orders what the plan looked like for investment in the neighborhoods of need. And I'm gonna see what that really looked like, because absent a plan and a real commitment to do these things, like I said, we're gonna be back here. So that's what we should be really focusing on. We're not trying to do transactional things like, okay, we might need a couple of more people in the police department. That's not what we should be about. We're trying to do transformational things here in this city. We're trying to actually change the lives and the outcomes of people that live here. So that's what the commitment we have to do. And it's hard, because some of these things cost money, but it's about priorities. And obviously what we have been doing worked for a while, but it's not working now, and we need to change it. We have to be innovative. So if we know any companies that can do the study that you were talking about, maybe for free for the city, please let me know. We will get on it and we will talk with them, Mr. Sir Felipe. We will talk with them, because we really want this done. We have to live in reality. The reality is, I'm talking, let me finish, absent everyone stepping up, including our large employers and the state and the city and everyone stepping up, we're going to be in the same situation. And I feel like every time we come here and we talk about these things, we want to point fingers at, well, who doing this or who didn't do that or who cut what or what administration did what. We have a much bigger problem than that. And until we start being willing to deal with the real issues, that's not just happening here in New Haven. It's happening nationwide, as you can see. That's why it's an uprising everywhere. Until we start dealing with those issues, we will have this conversation. And enough of my ancestors shed their blood building this country, and we don't need to be shedding this blood in these streets right here. And that's just the bottom line. People need to put down the guns. We always go after the people that shoot the guns. How about the people that's selling them? Okay? Well, it's so easy to get a gun and come from the suburbs and sell it to the people that live in these communities, and they go out there and shoot somebody, and we want to lock them up forever, but we never trace the gun back to where it came from. That's a problem. So if anybody got any ideas, we're always willing to hear them at the Board of Orders, always willing to work with everybody, always willing to work. That's why we're here today, because this is a collaboration. And it's not going to be one thing that's going to fix it. We can put 1 million more police in a police department. That is not going to fix the real issue. It's just not. We have to take the time and get to the core issues of why these things are happening. Everybody want to start with just the person that commits the crime. It starts way before that. It goes back to how we're educated in schools. We need to give these kids the proper tools that they need to be educated in a proper way so they can go out there and build a career for themselves or either get a good career. It's a lot of things that we need to do differently in this country, and for many, many years, people have not been willing to have the real conversations, and that's why we're here. But as everybody can see, I like to have the real conversations, and that's what we need to do, because we're going to be a model here in New Haven for other cities in the state. We're going to get it right here. As long as I'm the president of the Board of Orders, we're going to get it right, because I'm not going to start pushing. I'm not going to stop pushing, because I think it's some things that really need to change and need to start now, and we cannot wait. Any more questions?
Yeah, please. Are you going to put pressure
For
on
her.
Yale and
Absolutely.
and the state?
Absolutely, I do it every day of my life. That's what I'm doing. I mean, everywhere I speak, I'm saying it. We need our large institutions, our partners, to give more to the city. Like, I've been saying that since I've been here in 2011. I'm not gonna stop saying it, I'm not gonna stop pushing for it either. But getting people to actually realize it is gonna take more than just me and some other people. Everybody gotta get behind it. And a lot of times what happens is when we're out there saying that and look around, it's not too many people saying the same thing. So we're gonna have to change that if we really wanna make some major changes in this city. We just gotta be bold. I'm a bold person, so I'm taxing everybody to get out there, from the churches to the people that's committing the crimes, everybody. It's gonna take everybody to do it, everybody.
Will you be
So.
transferring any money in the budget to support other areas? I mean, is there any flexibility? Is it too tight?
Say that one more time?
Within the budget, do you see a need to transfer money to other departments, other areas of youth services, whatever, I mean, to actually build those up? Or is the budget just too tight that we really just need an influx of funds?
What I see in the budget is we need our larger partners to give us some money so we can do all of those things. Because, you know, it sounds nice when people say we really need to build this up, but it costs dollars, so we have to be realistic. I'm a realistic person. I like to call a spade a spade. So we need the money. We're gonna do what we have to do with the funds that we have and the resources, and if we need to adjust anything, we're always willing to do that. But we're not gonna adjust things without having the real information and the data to support why we need to do it, because we need some real outcomes. It's not just about moving stuff around to make people feel happy about the move. It's about real outcomes for me. So, yeah.
So you just have to keep the data and the information to make the right decision. So the annual budget of the city you're paying is $600 million. Why, and if we're spending $7 million on police overtime, why can't we find $250,000 to have a study done to say, what's the right manpower?
So the $250,000 you're talking about came from who? Who assessment is that? Yours?
You do an operational.
Right. So this is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna do. So we set money aside for that already. You're saying it's not enough. Maybe everybody could be saying it's not enough. I don't know. I just said if you know anyone that is willing to work with the city, we will definitely have that conversation with them. And if you would like to come with me to Yale University, Yale Hospital, or anywhere else and ask them to help us fund this, I'm willing to do it every day of the week. But for right now, with the resources that we have, we are doing the best we can do with what we have, and I'm not making no commitments beyond what we have to make anybody happy. I'm just not gonna do it. So if you wanna come with me, you can.
Let's not do it back and forth. I mean, if people want to have a discussion, we can perhaps have that.
I'm not worried about him. Yep.
You're changing the law to allow retired police officers to come back and serve and maybe do some of the work, I know there's no such thing as a routine traffic stop, but maybe do traffic stops for lower level calls in order to sort of relieve the demands on the curve.
I'm willing to have any conversation. I like having conversations with a lot of the community that's affected by some of these changes. So yeah, I'm willing to have any conversation. That's why we have like a budget season where we hear ideas and people can reach out directly to their auditors if they have ideas. And that's why we have this collaboration. So I'm willing to entertain any conversation that's gonna get me some outcomes.
Mayor and Chief, if I may build off the President's
Am I done?
comments. Oh, I think that's for them. Thank you. What specific steps do you plan to take in your various capacities to address this most immediate wave of violence and the structural concerns brought
Why
up?
don't you take the first stab at it?
Yeah, I'm gonna reiterate. I mean, we will, every resource we have is going to be brought to bear. And we're going to double down on our partnerships. We're going to make sure that we are focused completely on violent crime right now. I mean, every focus in this department will be violent crime. And so we're going to be using both our internal resources and our partnerships to address this crime. And we feel that we're going to be successful with that. You know, and I do want to answer, and you know, not to deviate, but I do want to answer this assessment question because it comes up a lot. I think we can't put the cart before the horse. We need to make a decision about what kind of police department we want in New Haven. Before you decide how many officers it takes, right, to properly, right, address the issues within our city, we need to determine what type of police department we want. If we want a community policing organization, that is resource intensive. If you want officers in the schools, if you want PAL programs, if you want community engagement through CMTs, that is resource intensive. If you want a 911 response team that just answers calls and goes and process scenes, that's a different assessment. But before we can invest dollars on saying what size should the department be, we really need a real deep dive into what the value system is of this community and what we want to see from our police department. And to be honest with you, that tends to change. And I think we need to have an honest conversation. What we will tell you, what I'll tell you as the chief, and what I'll speak on behalf of every man and woman of the department, we are willing to be what this city needs us to be. We are not working against you. We are willing to be what we need. We need to know what that is. We need to know what you want from us. That way we can be the department you need us to be. Right now, we're being a community policing, community engagement, partnership department because that's what you need from us. That's what you want from us. If that changes, we need to know that. But I think before that assessment's done, that answer has to be made. That determination has to be made for us to really meaningfully do an assessment that fits the city of New Haven. All right?
I can add just to your specific question, Tom. So I think there's two categories of what the police department itself is going to do, and then what we're going to do in partnership with the community. And the chief and I have talked a lot about how COVID has impacted some of our ability to respond to people because we haven't been doing as much physical interaction, parole and probation, for example. We haven't done call-ins for a long time. We're going to reinitiate that. Because we've made an assessment that if officers are wearing their masks, if they stay outside in certain cases, that the risk to them is quite low. And that's something that, you know, after we've learned things about COVID, we can start to redo this much more proactively. Engage with our street outreach workers, which for a time weren't doing a lot of person-to-person interaction as well. And I think that has historically in New Haven had quite a significant impact in us being able to reduce the likelihood of retribution, because in a lot of these incidents where there's beefs, if someone gets shot or a friend gets shot or a family member gets shot, they're more likely to respond unless we have people that are in our street outreach team or with the police department engaging with them very proactively. So that's one thing. I think the second side is on the community engagement. We're having this meeting this afternoon. I will be knocking on doors in the areas that experienced the homicide later today to talk directly with community members. It's clear with so many people here, but also the outpouring of other individuals that have reached out to me that a lot of people want to address this very quickly and with a strong partnership.
And for that most immediate response that you outlined, do you think that the city needs to put more money in the police overtime budget, or from what you understand, is there an adequate amount?
So the chief can add to this, but the chief is holding officers over now so that we have more coverage. Because we do have a challenge with coverage, but by having more officers on overtime or staying over on their shifts, we can have more coverage. I think that we have to be honest. You know, I proposed a budget, I proposed a tax increase that I thought was the right choice. I know, I don't want to raise people's taxes. The Board of Aldermen doesn't want to raise people's taxes. People don't want their taxes to go up. I get that. But at the same time, you know, I've spent a lot of time trying to find efficiencies in this budget. And I will continue to work to find those efficiencies tirelessly. But at the end of the day, these things cost money. And there's a couple of places that we can go to address these budget issues. We can cut the budget, we can raise taxes, or we can get the money from Yale University or the state. Those are our options. Like, period. People just have to understand that. And there's no magic money. There's no magic money. And if we do a couple cuts here and there, cut a couple of administrators from the Board of Education, we often hear that saves us $100,000, $200,000. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars that I think to President Walker Myers is, it was funny, she said she didn't quite have an answer, and then she came up and gave, I thought, what was a very solid answer to how we address the underlying economic inequality, and it's with money. I'm sorry if I get fired up, but like the reason that I talk about the budget so much, and people may find it boring, is because the budget pays for youth programs. The budget pays for guidance counselors and librarians and teachers in our school, and police department with community policing, as the chief described. If we don't have that money, if the suburbs don't do more to step up and provide more affordable housing, other options for our communities, If Yale University doesn't provide more money, we will continue to see these problems, period. It's plain and simple.
Mayor, if I may just add something to correct a incorrect and insensitive statement in regards to the Valley Street killing. Ice the Beef and myself, later in conjunction with the police department, are offering a reward for the shooting on Valley Street, and that's what I wanted to correct.
Okay, okay. So maybe we can wrap up the press conference because it's been quite a long time. We really appreciate people standing on your feet for so long here. If there's other questions, happy to answer them afterwards. Thank you so much.